A very happy Thanksgiving week to you. Hard to believe we're already here and the November gales are pushing on through. So we got not only a storm system that's bringing good lake effect into some of our snowbelt locations, but then we have a widespread snowstorm to talk about for the weekend. And then there's a potential snowstorm for some of our East Coast clients earlier next week before maybe another system forming out across the middle portion of the country. Very active pattern and reloading cold. This is what we talked about for the last few months when we were like, hey, it's an early start to winter. It's going to get pretty active likely by the time we get towards early December or so. So let's dive right on into it. And oh, what? Okay. Wow. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Brian Ivy here with you. Very active type pattern. We talked about winter starting early, going back really over the last few months. Since doing the research in August and September and putting out our first preliminary winter forecast ideas, and then especially in the more detailed winter forecast over the last few weeks, I mean, definitely getting into that idea that at some point later November, early December, the pattern was going to shift. We were going to get multiple shots of pretty cold air, and we were going to get more active. We have storm systems coming in. We'll talk about this in depth. Obviously, we got the one moving through right now with the wind, bringing in the lake effect snow, and then we have the widespread, maybe larger winter storm as we go throughout the weekend. We have a potential one early next week, more for our East Coast clients. Again, potential, but we'll keep a close eye on that. But yeah, November gales upon us. This is a nicely rotating big low pressure system. So you're going to feel the creaks in your bones, feel maybe a little bit more down with that huge pressure difference as we have snow accumulating out across portions of Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then starting out in Michigan right now, we'll get to that in just a moment, but 24-hour temp change. It's way warmer across our East Coast cities. It's a lot colder across areas of Ohio, Indiana, back towards the west. That's for sure. And what those temperatures are, just the middle to upper 30s from Columbus to Cleveland to Chicago, but it's well into the 50s across much of the Northeast. 68 degrees right now in DC as a big push of warm air. So major frontal boundary, that's for sure, bringing across that colder air now pushing in towards the east. It's a wound up low pressure, multiple troughs with it. That secondary trough back towards the west is where you got the snow falling right now into portions of Michigan. We're starting to see that changeover, starting to see the first little bit of lake enhancement here, but the main system out across portions of Minnesota and Wisconsin at this point. So this is the lake effect setup as we go throughout the next little bit. We talk a lot about fetch. So you need the winds, you need the moisture, you need the temperature difference from the surface to aloft in the atmosphere, obviously the temperature difference between your water and your air. And we got warm lakes, and we're getting a prolonged period of the right wind direction off of multiple different lakes. So that picks up more moisture, and we just have a big low pressure system moving through with already moisture. So this is a really good setup to really add on some impressive lake effect totals where you get those bands to set up. So for instance, if you track the winds here across portions of Lake Superior, over Lake Michigan, then over Lake Huron, you're into 3 lakes. You're taking that same air mass, you're moving it across 3 moisture sources with a major amount of instability due to that temperature differential, and you're pouring in snow. So it's about where those bands are. Now, here, it's just Lake Michigan that's seeing the banding. So areas just to the east of Lake Michigan here and west of Erie, west of Huron, not going to see as much, but it's still going to add up because it's a big lake. But then you have the 2 connections here across Lake Erie. Yeah, Northeast Ohio, far Northeast Ohio, because you see those winds. They're not northwest. They are much more aligned west to east. So a lot of things to keep in mind when we do our forecasting for lake effect. You see that wind direction doesn't change much. The speed dies down a little bit as you go through the day on Thursday, but it's still going to be a pretty good environment until you get into Thursday night and then Friday, except for maybe areas in towards New York State and maybe a little bit into Pennsylvania, but then our next system already developing back towards the west, as it's going to be a pretty active stretch. That's going to be a